Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. The Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus has a new leader, Tufan Erhurman. His election comes at a time when foreign military presence in the Greek south is growing and debate over the divided island's future is intensifying. Before the vote, the TRNC parliament backed a resolution supporting a two-state solution, a stance warmly welcomed by Ankara. But Erhurman's own platform calls for reunification under a federal model. As both visions collide, the question is now, how will his presidency shape the next phase of the island's peace negotiations? Winning by a landslide, Erhurman moved quickly to set out his position. He vowed that the Turkish Cypriot side would never compromise on political equality, a principle already recognized in the UN Security Council resolutions. Addressing growing Western and Israeli military activity in southern Cyprus and Iran's recent threats, he warned of new security risks facing the north. He also stressed that Turkey's guarantor role remains vital to the island's stability. Decades-long peace talks came to a standstill in 2017. For now, hopes for reconciliation rest on whether Erhurman's vision can restart a process long frozen in time. Furthermore, joining me now in studio is the Managing Director of the European Neighborhood Council, Samuel Dovry-Vesterby. From Lefkoşa and the TRNC, we're joined by Said Aksit, Associate Professor at Near East University, and from Stanford University in Berlin, European Studies Professor Ulrich Bruckner. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. So a lot has happened in the little divided island of Cyprus between the south and the north. There was an election in the north on the Turkish side. New leadership, Tufan Erhurman, he won. Now, Sam, I want to begin with you. There are a lot of policies and a lot of uncertainty on the island. Now, how much of, whether it's reunification, whether it's two-state solution, how much of that is a government policy? How much of that is state policy? How much can the new president change or shift from the current trajectory?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to mention that this election has shown a shift in political party. So the previous president, Ersin Tatar, has always had a very different position when it comes to the peace negotiations and a totally different position when it comes to one state versus federal or confederal solution to the island. Now there's a president who is from a different party and of course who has a moderate conciliatory stance, seen as a pro-European, pro-EU voice, and who has had a long administrative past, also working in the administration of Cyprus, but also having relations with EU and of course with Türkiye, who proposes to have a much more consensus-based, negotiated peace agreement way forward. So I think it is undeniable with the landslide victory of this president that now things are bound to change. Some things will remain within the state policy realm. It is inevitable, but I think that there is absolutely clear evidence from this election that negotiations are in the making.
Okay, I mean, the People's Will definitely says that there is a shift in political views on the island. How much of that is domestic? How much of that is a view towards the two-state solution or the reunification? That remains to be seen, but on the island in Lefkoşa, we have Said. And Said, I want to ask you, I mean, I don't really know much about Erhurman. I mean, I know that he won very, very decisively. The Turkish president and the leadership here congratulated him very, very quickly and recognized, obviously, the election results as free and fair. Now, I mean, when I look at the Turkish Twitter sphere and social media, there was this concern about Erhurman that he might want to give up too much, might be very, very compromising towards the Greek Cypriot side. But then I kind of have been watching him talk the last couple of days, and I want you to listen specifically to this one comment that really struck me. So, Said, if you can listen in very quickly. This is the new president of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus.
İsrail'in güneye geldiği With Israel coming south, the US coming south, France coming south, the EU already there, the British already having sovereign bases, all of this. I hope Christodoulides is aware Turkey's guarantorship of the entire island is not a matter of debate. The Republic of Turkey is and will continue to be the guarantor of the entire island. And this has become even more crucial under current circumstances, because it becomes increasingly difficult for us to feel secure.
Güçleşiyor günden güne.
You know, inside of that site, especially talking about Turkey not just being the guarantor in the north, but having responsibilities in the south as well. I mean, that does sound a little more like a right-wing politician coming from the island rather than a more left-wing politician like Tufan Erhurman. Is it not?
I think what he does is a very balanced, actually, opinion indication there. He sounds like a right-wing leader at one point, but of course, one of the things that he does is that he's trying to associate guarantorship not only with, guarantorship of Turkey for Turkish Cypriots only, but the stemming rights of Turkey from the establishment of the Republic of Cyprus. Where Turkey is a guarantor for the Republic of Cyprus, not the Turkish Cypriots only. I think that's an important note to make there at that point. And he's actually embedding this argument into discussions of what is happening in the international context right now as well, right? Because when you hear the Greek Cypriot leadership talk about guarantorship of Turkey, elimination of Turkey from the island, we are actually ignoring the part that the Greek Cypriot administration has been very much entangled with, different powers and providing them actually spaces for strategic purposes. I mean, they have agreements with the United States, France, Israel, Britain. Even though Britain has has bases on the island, sovereign bases on the island, they signed a new agreement with the Republic of Cyprus. In this sense, pulling the attention to that dimension is a crucial aspect as well. How can we question Turkey's presence on the island as we have so many, major powers involved on the island as well, right? This is kind of disarming only one party on the island while trying to solve a problem, which will not work.
Ulrich, I want to ask you about how the EU has received the election news from the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. I mean, it seems that Brussels warmly received it, but is that warm reception due to what Erhurman's projected policies would be, or did they just want a change from the former president Ersin Tatar's two-state solution advancement?
Well, the EU has been impatiently waiting for positive signals from the island, and this is now perceived as a positive sign. But the general position is this is an island, and the Republic of Cyprus is responsible for the whole island, as an equivalent of what we just heard as a quote from the president in the north. And that makes it very difficult. I've been traveling on study trips to the island for decades, and I always witnessed very hardcore positions that don't really put in the direction of a compromise. So I'm very skeptical regarding internal solutions if the general environment in the region and in the geopolitical role of Cyprus doesn't change. But right now it seems as if there is a lot going on, and so it could be a possible development in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Samuel, do you think these election results can impact EU-Turkish relations? I mean, what's the big picture for the Turks and the Europeans regarding the recent developments?
Well, I'd like to first echo Professor Bruckner on this. When we just look at it from a localized point of view, meaning the island, then the disagreements are rife. But once we zoom out and start looking at the greater geopolitical picture with regards to the Eastern Mediterranean, the EU and Türkiye, all of a sudden we see that the current climate, the current geopolitical climate, is actually very much in favor of trying to find a solution on the island. And the reason for that is, I think everyone knows, today we live in a very divided world with high security risks. Russia is a big threat. And at the same time, Turkey and the EU are trying to work together on, for example, customs union reform. They're trying to work together on the big joint procurement program of the EU worth 150 billion called SAFE. This would be a huge benefit for Turkey, and vice versa, it would also be a huge benefit for the EU. And at the same time, both are also looking towards the Caucasus, they're looking towards Central Asia and connectivity, which is very high on the agenda in the EU as well. These big incentives, which are really relatively important in the political spectrum today, can be a very positive push factor in trying to remove the thorn which has been Cyprus and reunification or confederal federal model for years.
Mm-hmm. Said, I mean, as this whole election process was going on, the TRNC Parliament backed a resolution for a two-state solution. Now, what does that mean? Was that a message being sent to Erhurman, like saying, hey, the Parliament wants to continue down this road? Was that a message to Türkiye? Will that change anything? Does the new president have the power to say, you know, I don't care what Parliament says, I'm going to go in this direction? Or will they try to find middle ground and work together?
I think the parliamentary decision was actually a final push to support Ersin Tatar by the ruling parties in power. Otherwise, you know, it has not received a wide sort of acceptance, and we don't expect it to be actually defining the feature of any form of negotiations, you know, or influence upcoming negotiations. Basically, what we expect is a re-evaluation of the Turkish position based on consultations between the TRNC leader Erhurman and President Erdogan. I guess this meeting is going to take place soon. I mean, later this week or early next week, perhaps after, you know, Erhurman determines the key figures in his team, basically. But the main drive will be certainly the geopolitical factors, as Samuel has also mentioned in this respect. But I have to say that I'm not as optimistic as Samuel is in terms of, you know, the environment, the international environment providing a very useful sort of setting for a drive towards peace talks or establishment of a federal Cyprus. It is certainly going to basically establish some form of negotiations, but based on experience of the last 50 years, I mean, it's not very easy to say that the environment is very much convenient for a very strong push.
Mm-hmm. Ulrich, I want to ask you, I mean, the past 51 years since 1974, the Turkish peace operation and the divided status of the island since then, I mean, majority of that time, I'd say about 47 to 48 of those years have been spent on some type of federation negotiations, whether it's at the UN, whether it's at different platforms. Do you think this is going to bring new impetus? Is something going to change where there's going to be some massive new breakthrough? Or, I mean, when I look at the positions that Erhurman has versus the traditional federation positions that other Turkish Cypriot leaders have had, they're not really that different.
Well, if you talk to people in the island, then they couldn't care less what kind of terminology you use. What they want is opportunities in their lives to make the best use of what is possible to live a normal life on the island. And whether you call it a confederal system or a federation is of secondary importance. What the European Union is very good in is to bridge problems that have been caused by border issues and by conflicting narratives that extreme positions on both sides create conflicts. But if you belong to something bigger, which in essence is about abolishing internal borders, then people can happily live together and sometimes even forget the reasons what caused tensions in the past. So it's all about storytelling and about narratives. And if you define a hard-boiled national interest that this is all mine and I'm a guaranteeing force, then it doesn't lead to much. But if you see the opportunities of a reunification under whatever formal political system, then there is a possibility for a flourishing future for everyone involved.
Sam, I want to ask you a little about the Turks and the Greeks. Obviously, that relationship has always been tense, and the Cyprus issue, one of those tense flashpoints between the Turks and the Greeks. What would help the other more? Solving the Cyprus issue would help the Turkish-Greek relationship, or, for example, the exclusive economic zone being decided between the Turks and the Greeks help solve the Cyprus issue? I mean, what's first, the chicken or the egg? What needs to be solved first for the other one to unravel?
I think it's quite clear at the moment that one of the main obstacles within the relationship between Greece and Türkiye, within the relationship between the EU, including also sometimes Germany, but especially also France and Türkiye today, coming back to these 3 points, whether it is a maritime delimitation or whether it's customs union reform or whether it's connectivity or even defense procurement and general foreign policy posture with regards to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and the relationship with the increasingly tense problems linked to Ukraine and Russia is Cyprus. When we look at the Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels and we look at the blockages which take place, often they come from Cyprus and often they come also from Greece. So one of these thorns in the relationship, as was also mentioned previously and has been ongoing since the Annan Plan back in 2004, has been these blockages and not being able to move forward on anything geopolitical, anything meaningful economic between Turkey and the EU. And here, I think, again, the problem lay in trying to unravel and solve the Cyprus issue.
But why is the Cyprus issue put on Turkey's plate, geopolitical plate, back in 2004, not put on the Greek Cypriots' plate before they were accepted into the EU? I mean, this is brought to Turkey as the Turkish problem, but at the end of the day, Cyprus, the island, and their EU membership and their accession process, I mean, it was let slide.
I mean, at the time, the context was very different. There was no urgency in the same way that there is today. Our previous speaker spoke about the fact that he is a little bit less optimistic about a peace agreement. I would entirely agree that when we look at the past, the past 50 years, and especially also when we look at the period between 2000 and 2010, in which the Annan Plan was voted down, it is not a pessimistic outlook. But the difference is that in the past 15 years, I think as many geopolitical experts also profess today, things have changed dramatically. We're not living in the same world anymore. The incentive mechanisms are fundamentally different, and they're different both for Turkey and for the EU. Hence, there is this geopolitical willingness to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Said, I want to ask you a little about the security situation. I mean, right now, one of the most important topics in Brussels and for Europe is the new security architecture. Obviously, this urgency coming from the war in Ukraine and the island of Cyprus obviously being part of European soil, very, very important. And it occupies a very important space in the Eastern Mediterranean, whether it's logistic, airspace, and whatnot. But at the same time, you have this understanding that there won't be military activity on the island yet. You have the Greeks showing interest, the Israelis showing interest, the Americans showing interest, and the island seems to be taking steps to becoming more and more militarized. Now, this is obviously going to be a big issue for the Greek Cypriots. It's going to be an even bigger issue for the Turkish Cypriots. How do you think this is going to be handled?
It's not a very easy question, to be honest with you, but perhaps how the Greek Cypriot presidency will actually manage relations with Turkey will be a key point here in this respect, right? One of the expectations is basically an intent not only to consider what is happening on the island as something that needs to be discussed vis-a-vis Turkey, but also the Turkish Cypriots as well. I mean, when the Tufan Erhurman was making his earlier statements, one of the positions that he actually put forward was the increasing act of ignorance of the Turkish Cypriots. Right, that's one of the things that we see, and since the changes, since the failure of the Crown Montana, actually, and the increasing tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean, we see a policy of the European Union that simply supported the Greek Cypriot position. It has taken a position against Turkey or tried to pressurize Turkey, if you like, using your previous statement, putting the Cyprus question back into Turkey's plate rather than, considering it's a problem for all sides, right? So we need basically not only a change in the north, or positive, attitude in the north, but a positive attitude in the south, which is very much ignored. And we see actually decisions taken, symbolic decisions. For example, we have been discussing a monument decision in Cyprus in the last few days, the European Parliament's, monument decision concerning the missing persons in Cyprus. But, here the reference is actually raising a monument to, in memory of the missing people of the Greek Cypriots in 1974, which is contrary to any EU policy approach, or let's say a joint attitude or approach that has been carried towards actually the finding missing persons for both communities on the island. This has been one of the most humane dimensions of Cyprus, and Erhurman's position was very clear in this sense, and he was basically arguing that it will not be an issue that the Turkish Cypriots will simply condemn, but will take the initiative actually and discuss it with different circles and all parties involved. I think this is remarkable. First he wants to talk to every side, right? And with reference to his security concerns as well, he's very much in favor of a peace that will be actually having sort of an ambition that would demilitarize the island for all sides.
Ulrich, I also want to ask you about the security situation, especially on the island, because when we look at what's happened in Ukraine, what's happened in Gaza, very, very quickly, one single attack could spiral out into a very protracted conflict. So we're seeing many actors now showing more interest in militarizing the island, or at least having a presence, a footprint on the island. How dangerous is that for the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots? Being concerned for both sides, because at the end of the day, a conflict requires two parties, and being concerned for both sides, how much of a real concern is that for you, for Brussels?
Well, from the Brussels perspective, it's not only a peace question for the people living on the island. As we discussed already before, it's also geopolitically a much more important question than other regional conflicts. Because in times in which the European Union is working on becoming more strategically autonomous, because it has to, we face a situation in which Türkiye is a member of NATO, is not a member of the EU, while Cyprus is not a member of NATO, but it's a member of the EU. And that makes it extremely complicated and leads to the self-blocking tendencies that we discussed before. So for the European Union, it would be ideal if this self-blocking situation would be removed and peace would be brought to the island in times in which there are even more external actors being involved to destabilize the region.
Mm-hmm. Sam, hydrocarbons, obviously there's a lot of expectation that there's a wealth of hydrocarbons off the coast of the island, some in the north, some in the south. And there's been a lot of issues with disagreements of who gets to drill where. Do you think this change in leadership and just, the sheer value of what's under the ocean over there, do you think that could be a driver towards bringing everyone back to the table? Because we really haven't seen meaningful talks in such a long time. What could be a catalyst to bring everyone back to the table?
That's a good question. For the past 10, 15 years, of course, the Republic of Cyprus, also with the UN and the EU, regards the island as being occupied. And as a result, they have taken, let's say, unilateral measures in order to, what they would say, protect themselves. They've been engaging a lot with Israel. They've been creating this kind of East Mediterranean gas forum. They have now also engaged more on the IMEC corridor. And all of these positions have really at times created a bit of a division with regards to Türkiye, and especially with regards to reconciliation on the island. Up until recently, that was not a major concern inside the EU, but as I mentioned before, geopolitical changes have raised concerns within the EU to try to accommodate a better situation on the island in order to precisely find common ground. So the hope would be that now the EU will start mobilizing and pushing together with some key member states to see whether hydrocarbons, whether corridor policies, or whether other policies with Türkiye can be a leverage point and a consensus point to create peace and better negotiation climates.
Okay, thank you, Sam. We are out of time, so I want to thank you, Sam, for coming here on set, and also Sait and Ulrich for joining us and helping us unpack the ramifications and the impact of the election results in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.